Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Ready to, dive right back into those current affairs.
Absolutely. I think we've got a really fascinating set of topics to unpack today, all crucial for those UPSC aspirations.
Definitely. It is March 21st, 2025, and this is part 2, so, some of this might be revision for you, some might be brand new, but either way, we're going to try to bring out the stuff that really matters for your prep.
Sounds good. Let's get into it.
All right, so kicking things off, there's been a pretty big development in the world of digital payments, and that's the Cabinet's approval for a new incentive scheme.
Oh, you mean the one focused on those low-value BA-UPI transactions?
Exactly, that one. Seems like they're really committing to this, too, because they've set aside a solid 1,500 crore just for this financial year.
Yeah, that's a pretty substantial sum, and it's specifically targeted, right? Like, it's for transactions up to $2,000.
Right. And it's not like we as consumers are getting the incentive directly. It's actually going to work through the banks and the payment providers.
So more like an indirect boost to the whole UPI ecosystem.
Exactly. The way it works is the incentive goes first to the acquiring bank, which is the merchant's bank, and then it's divided up between the issuer bank, the payment service provider bank, and even the app providers.
Interesting. So what's the thinking behind all of this?
Well, it seems like they have a few goals in mind. First, they definitely want to make BHIM-UPI the go-to platform for digital payments in India.
Makes sense. Promoting our own homegrown platform?
Yep. And they also have this ambitious target of hitting 20,000 crore transactions in total this financial year. It's a big number.
Wow, that is ambitious. And I bet part of that is bringing more people into the digital payments fold, especially in those tier 3 to 6 cities and those rural areas.
Right. And for that, they're pushing for those more innovative solutions like UPI N23PI, which is designed for feature phones, and the offline options like UPI Lite and UPI Lite X.
Smart move. Caters to a much wider audience.
For sure. And, when we think about the bigger picture, this is really good news for those smaller merchants.
How so?
Well, by making it easier for people to use UPI, it means the merchants don't have to pay as much to offer those services.
Oh, right, because of that whole merchant discount rate thing.
The MDR, exactly. Remember back in 2020, they made it 0 for DHIM UPI transactions? That's basically builds on that.
Right, right. Just for anyone who needs a reminder, MBR is that fee merchants have to pay when people use cards or online platforms to pay.
Exactly. So, it all ties back to BHIM, that part interface for money app, which was launched back in 2016. It uses UPI, the Unified Payments Interface, which NPCI, the National Payments Corporation of India, developed.
UPI has been a real game changer. The way it lets you link all your different bank accounts to one app is just so convenient.
Absolutely. And it's not just limited to India anymore, is it? NPCI's got that subsidiary, NIPL, which is focused on taking RuPay and UPI global.
Oh, yeah, they even partnered with a company in Singapore, if I remember correctly. Big step towards cross-border payments.
For sure. And what makes UPI so successful is how user-friendly it is. Features like the virtual payment address, the single-click two-factor authentication, how well it integrates with India Stack, and that UPI One World Wallet for NRIs and foreign visitors. They've really thought of everything.
Totally agree. It's a well-designed system.
All right, so moving on from the digital world, let's talk about something a bit more, down to earth.
Agriculture.
Exactly. The cabinet also approved some revisions to the Rashtriya Gokul Mission. That's the RGM.
That's been going on for a while now, hasn't it? Since 2014, I think?
Yeah, that's right. The goal back then was all about developing and conserving those indigenous cattle breed, improving their genetics, and, ultimately increasing milk production and productivity.
And the Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying has been in charge of making it all happen.
Yep, they've been doing all sorts of things, from strengthening the semen stations and that whole artificial insemination network to supporting those central cattle breeding farms.
Plus all those skill development programs for farmers and raising awareness, right?
Definitely. And remember those Gopalgrams, those integrated centers for indigenous cattle development?
Oh, yeah, those were a good idea. So what are these revisions all about?
Well, for starters, they're putting a good chunk of money behind it. 3,400 crore for this whole 15th Finance Commission cycle, which runs from 2021-22 to 2025-26.
Makes sense. Big plans need proper funding. But what specifically are they changing?
Well, they're adding 2 new things, which I think are really interesting. The first is setting up these heifer rearing centers, or HRCs. Basically, it's about making sure we've got good quality young female cattle coming up.
Ensuring the future generation of the herd.
Exactly. The government's going to be providing 35% of the capital costs to agencies who want to set up these HRCs, and the goal is to have enough housing for 15,000 heifers.
Nice. That's a big number. And what's the other new thing?
They're going to be providing interest subvention for farmers who want to buy those high genetic merit IVF heifers. IVF means in vitro fertilization, just to be clear.
Right, so making it more affordable for farmers to get those two quality heifers.
Exactly. It's all about encouraging the use of those advanced breeding technologies. And, the original RGM has already had some pretty good results.
Like what?
Well, milk production's gone up by over 63% in the last 10 years, and per capita milk availability's also seen a big jump.
Oh, wow, that is significant progress for the dairy sector. What were those numbers again?
It went from 307 grams per day to 471 grams per day.
That's a pretty impressive increase.
Right. And overall, dairy productivity is also looking good. Plus, that nationwide artificial insemination program under the RGM has been providing free AI services, which has really helped with breed improvement.
Yeah, that free AI is a big deal for a lot of farmers.
Okay, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about something that's really crucial to India's economy, and that's remittances.
Remittances. All right, so the RBI recently published its findings from the sixth round of India's remittances survey, covering 2023-24.
Right. Just to be sure everyone on the same page, when we say remittances, we're talking about that money that migrant workers send back home to their families.
Right, those financial flows are super important for a lot of developing economies. And what's really interesting is how much India's international migrant population has grown. We're talking triple the number from a few decades out.
That's a huge jump from 6.6 million back in 1990 to an estimated 18.5 million in 2024.
It's a lot of people. And, India's been the top recipient of remittances globally for quite a while now, haven't we? Since 2008, I think.
That's right, according to the World Bank. And the amount of money coming in is pretty incredible. In just about a decade, it's more than doubled.
What was it, like $55 billion in 2010-11?
Yeah, U.S. $55.6 billion. Now it's a whopping U.S. $118.7 billion for 2023-24.
That's a massive inflow of foreign exchange. Really helps with our balance of payments. But you know what I find particularly interesting? It's where those remittances are coming from.
Oh, you mean how more of it is coming from those advanced economies like the U.S. and the U.K.?
Exactly. The Gulf countries like the UAE used to be the biggest source, but now it seems like more and more Indians are working in skilled professions in those developed nations.
Yeah, those two countries combined now make up about 40% of all the remittances coming in.
It makes you wonder about the long-term impact this will have on India's ties with these countries, like economically and socially.
Absolutely. But what about within India itself? The survey also looked at which states are receiving the most remittances.
Right. As you might expect, Maharashtra is still at the top, followed by Kerala and Tamil Nadu.
Makes sense, given the history of migration from those states.
Exactly. And you know what else I found encouraging? The cost of sending remittances to India is apparently lower than the global average.
Oh, that's good news.
Yeah, and they say that's because more and more people are using those digital channels for transfers. Makes the whole process more efficient and cheaper, which ultimately benefits the families receiving the money.
For sure. And, when you look at the big picture, remittances play a huge role in our economy.
Definitely. The RBI report says they actually finance about 42% of India's trade deficit.
Wow, that's a big chunk. And they even surpass the inflow of FDI, foreign direct investment.
Yeah, remittances are a pretty consistent and reliable source of external finance for India. But it's not just about the macroeconomics, is it?
No, absolutely not. These remittances are literally what allow families to have a better standard of living, to afford things like healthcare and education.
Very true. It's money that directly impacts people's lives.
Okay, so let's turn our attention to the seas now. There's been some interesting news from the maritime sector. Remember that Sagarmala program?
Yeah, the one that was launched back in 2015.
That's the one. Well, they recently held the National Sagarmala Apex Committee meeting, and they talked about launching this new Sagarmala Startup Innovation Initiative, or S2I2.
Interesting. What's that all about?
Basically, it's about encouraging startups to come up with innovative solutions for the maritime sector. Things like green shipping, smart port technologies, new ways of handling logistics, and even sustainable coastal development.
Sounds ambitious.
It is. They're calling it RISE, which stands for Research, Innovation, Startups, and Entrepreneurship.
So the idea is to speed up development in those areas.
Yeah, by providing funding, mentorship, and partnerships with industry players.
Makes sense. And they also talked about upgrading the whole Sagarmala program to Sagarmala 2.0, didn't they?
They did. And from what I understand, this new version will focus more on shipbuilding, repair, braking, and recycling.
Oh, that's interesting. Seems like a strategic move to boost our capabilities in those areas.
For sure. And the overall goal is pretty ambitious. They want to align with this Maritime Amrit Kaal Vision 2047, make India one of the top 5 shipbuilding nations globally, and massively increase our port handling capacity.
How much are they looking to increase it by?
They're aiming for a capacity of 10 billion metric tons per year. That's huge.
That's going to take a lot of infrastructure development, for sure.
Absolutely. Just to recap, the original Sagarmala program was all about leveraging India's backed coastline and all those navigable waterways to cut down on logistics costs.
Right, and it's under the Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways, with that National Sagarmala Apex Committee, the NFAC, making the big decisions.
Exactly. And remember those 5 pillars of the program: port-led industrialization, port modernization, port connectivity, coastal shipping and inland waterways, and coastal community development.
Right, a pretty holistic approach to maritime development.
And they've already made good progress. They've got over 100 port modernization projects running, which has added a lot of cargo handling capacity. They've also been working on improving port connectivity with roads, rail, and waterways.
Plus all those projects for coastal communities, like developing fishing harbors.
Right. They've definitely been busy.
For sure.
Okay, let's switch back to land for a moment. And there's been some news about the National Program for Dairy Development, or NPDD.
The NPDD, oh yeah, that's another one of those long-running programs, isn't it?
Launched back in 2014, and then they restructured it in 2021.
So what are they changing now?
Well, the main focus is still on modernizing and expanding the dairy infrastructure, but they've also got their eye on increasing farmers' incomes.
Makes sense. Need to make sure the farmers benefit from all this development.
Exactly. And they're putting some serious money behind her. Another 1,000 crore, bringing the total budget for this finance commission cycle to 2,790 crore.
Wow, that's a significant investment. So what are they hoping to achieve with all this?
One of the big goals is to set up 10,000 new dairy cooperative societies.
10,000. That's a lot of new societies.
It is. They're also looking to improve milk procurement and processing, especially in the Northeast.
Good idea. That region has a lot of potential for dairy.
Definitely. And they're also planning to form 2 new milk producer companies and provide grant support to help them grow.
All sounds very promising. I'm sure job creation is a big part of this too, right?
Absolutely. They're expecting to create over 3.2 lakh new jobs, both directly and indirectly. And they're aiming for 70% of those jobs to go to women.
Great to hear that focus on women's empowerment.
For sure. So the NPDD has 2 main components. Component A is all about improving the basic infrastructure, especially in those remote areas. Things like milk chilling plants, testing labs, and certification systems.
Makes sense. You need those basic building blocks in place.
Right. And then component B is called Dairying Through Cooperatives, and it's actually supported by JICA, the Japan International Cooperation Agency.
Oh, so it involves international collaboration.
Yeah, they're working together to develop dairy cooperatives in 9 different states.
Nice. Brings in some global expertise.
Definitely. And, the original NPDD already had some pretty impressive results.
Like what?
Well, they created a lot of jobs, increased the capacity for milk procurement, and set up a lot of those milk testing labs in villages.
Important stuff for a strong and safe dairy sector.
Absolutely. Plus, they installed a whole lot of milk coolers and those fancy adulteration detection systems in over 230 dairy plants.
Those adulteration systems are really important for ensuring the quality of milk.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, so let's talk about something that's been in the news quite a bit lately, and that's MGNREGA.
MGNREGA, the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. What's been happening with that?
Well, they've been seeing a pretty significant increase in the number of people employed under the scheme.
Oh, what are the numbers like?
Between 2014-15 and 2024-25, they've generated 3,029 crore person days of employment. That's an 82% increase.
Wow, that's quite a jump. Seems like it's still a vital program for rural employment.
For sure, and they've also made a lot of progress in getting everyone linked to their odd heart numbers.
Makes sense. Streamlines those wage payments and keeps everything transparent.
Exactly. Just as a reminder, MGNREGA was launched back in 2005, and the main idea is to provide 100 days of guaranteed wage employment to rural households who are willing to do unskilled manual labor.
Right. It's a centrally sponsored scheme managed by the Ministry of Rural Development.
And it covers pretty much the whole country except for those fully urbanized districts.
And the wage rates are set by the central government but can vary from state to state based on the Consumer Price Index for agricultural laborers.
Exactly. But what's really cool about MGNREGA is that it's not just about creating jobs, it's also had a positive social impact.
Oh yeah, like how women's participation has gone up from 48% to over 58%.
Exactly. And the number of water-stressed rural blocks has gone down, while the litigation of individual assets like wells and ponds has gone up. Plus, they've been building all those Amrit Sarovars for water conservation.
Impressive. So it's making a real difference in rural areas.
It really is. All right, let's move on to something a bit more techie. There's this new initiative called Sansad Bashini.
Sansad Bashini. What's that all about?
It's a collaboration between the Lok Sabha and MEDIE, the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology.
What are they working on?
The idea is to use AI, specifically MEDI's Bashini platform, to provide better multilingual support in Parliament and to make things run more smoothly overall.
Ah, so breaking down language barriers and making parliamentary proceedings more accessible?
Exactly. Bashini is that AI-powered language translation platform, so they're going to be putting it to good use.
Very cool. Sounds like a positive step towards inclusivity.
Okay, let's switch gears again and talk about the environment. The WMO, the World Meteorological Organization, just released its State of Climate 2024 report.
Oh, and what's it saying?
Well, it paints a pretty worrying picture. The report says that greenhouse gas levels are the highest they've been in at least 800,000 years.
800,000 years. That's a long time.
It is. And to make matters worse, each of the last 10 years has been one of the 10 warmest on record since we started keeping track back in 1850.
Not good.
No, not at all. The report also talks about how quickly the cryosphere is melting. That's all the frozen parts of the Earth, like the glaciers and ice sheets.
Yeah, that's a big problem for sea level rise and for the availability of fresh water.
For sure. Okay, let's talk about something a bit more positive. There's been an interesting development in the defense sector.
Oh, what's that?
So, Indian and U.S. companies have signed an OU, a Memorandum of Understanding, to work together on developing autonomous surface vessels, or ASVs.
ASVs, those are like robotic boats, right?
Exactly. They can operate on the surface of the sea and collect all sorts of oceanographic data.
Interesting. And I think they have some advantages over those underwater drones, the AUVs.
Right. ASVs can carry more, and their batteries last longer. And a lot of them are designed to use renewable energy, like solar and wind.
Smart. But I imagine they must face some challenges too, especially with all the traffic on the seas.
Oh, definitely. Navigation can be tricky in busy shipping lanes.
Makes sense.
Okay, moving on to international news. Serbia's been making headlines because they've been accused of using a sonic weapon to break up protests in Belgrade.
Sonic weapon, what's that?
It's also sometimes called an acoustic weapon. It's basically a device that can blast really loud sounds over long distances.
Oh, wow. And I'm guessing that's not good for anyone's hearing?
No, not at all. They can cause tinnitus and even permanent hearing loss.
How do they even work?
Well, they use these things called transducers, which convert electrical energy into focused beams of sound.
Sounds pretty intense.
It is.
Okay, switching gears again, there's been some news from the world of science. A new study is challenging the famous Miller-Urey hypothesis.
The Miller-Urey hypothesis, that's the one about the origins of life on Earth, right?
Exactly, the one that says lightning strikes created the conditions for life to emerge.
And this new study is saying something different.
Well, they're suggesting that something called microlightning might have played a bigger role.
Microlightning?
Yeah, it's basically those tiny little sparks of electricity that happen inside clouds.
Huh. Interesting. So what's the problem with the original hypothesis?
Well, some people have argued that big lightning strikes probably weren't that common back then, and they mostly happened over the oceans. So any organic molecules they created would have been diluted or dispersed.
Makes sense. So this new study is proposing an alternative energy source.
Exactly. And they've actually shown in the lab that microlightning can create organic molecules too.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
It is.
All right, back to India for a moment. CDOT, the Center for Development of Telematics, has launched a new program called SAMARTH.
SAMARTH, what's that?
It's an incubation program specifically for startups in the telecommunications and IT sectors.
Oh, so they're trying to help these new companies grow.
Exactly. They want to help them develop sustainable business models, get access to resources, and make that jump from having an idea to actually launching a product.
And who are they partnering with for this?
STPI, the Software Technology Parks of India.
Makes sense. They've got the expertise in that area.
For sure. All right, last but not least, some news from the defense acquisition front. The Ministry of Defense has signed a contract with Bharat Electronics Limited, or BEL, for a new radar system for the Indian Air Force.
Oh, which one?
It's called the LLTR Ashwini, which stands for Low-Level Transportable Radar.
LLTR Ashwini. Okay. And what's special about this radar?
Well, it uses AESA technology that's active electronically scanned phased array. It's pretty cutting-edge stuff.
And it was developed here in India.
Yep, by DRDO's Electronics and Radar Development Establishment.
Nice. So what can it do?
It can track all sorts of aircraft, from fast fighter jets to slow-moving drones and helicopters, and it has a range of 200 kilometers.
Sounds pretty impressive.
It is.
Okay, before we wrap up, I wanted to mention something about global sustainability efforts.
Sure, what's that?
The World Economic Forum has this initiative called Uplink, and they're reporting some really positive results in terms of carbon emission reduction.
Oh, that's great. How much have they managed to reduce?
They're saying they've cut emissions by 142,400 tons in 2023-24 through all the innovative solutions they support.
That's a significant amount. So what exactly is Uplink?
It's all about finding and supporting promising early-stage innovations that can help create a more sustainable future. Things that are good for the environment, promote social equity, and all that.
Sounds like a great initiative.
It is. They actually launched it back in 2020 with Deloitte and Salesforce.
A good example of collaboration for a common goal. Okay, one final piece of news before we wrap up. There's been some talk about this informal alliance called Squad.
Squad. I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, it's a new one. Apparently, the Philippines is encouraging India to join.
Interesting. Who else is in this squad?
Right now, it's just the U.S., Japan, Australia, and the Philippines.
Okay, so what's their goal?
Well, they say they want to deal with regional aggression and maintain stability in the Indo-Pacific.
Sounds a bit like the Squad, doesn't it?
Yeah, kind of. But the Quad has India in it. Remember, this Squad is a different grouping altogether.
Right, right. Interesting development.
It is. Well, I think that covers all the major current events for today. We've really gone through a lot, from the economy and agriculture to international relations and even some scientific breakthroughs.
A real mix of topics, but they're all important for anyone preparing for the UPSC exam.
Definitely. And remember, it's not just about memorizing facts. You've got to be able to analyze, understand the connections between these events, and see how they fit into the bigger picture.
Couldn't agree more. Think about the implications, the potential consequences, the links to policy decisions. That's what will really help you stand out.
Absolutely. For instance, think about those remittances coming from advanced economies. What kind of long-term effects might that have on India? How will it change our society, our economy, our relationships with other countries? Lots to think about there.
For sure.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive for today. If you found it helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more in-depth analysis of current affairs. See you next time.
See ya.